What's cracking, y'all? You are now watching Boo TV. Appreciate you for stopping in. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell, stay notified, and let's get into the topic for today. What's cracking, everybody? Shout out to the Bird Gang. Thank you for stopping in. I want to give a big shout out to Larry Bird. Happy birthday, Larry Bird. December 7th, Larry Bird turned 67 years old. Now, technically, I'm posting this video a little bit late. Originally, my plans for Larry Bird birthday, especially considering we have a large Larry Bird fan base here, is that I wanted to open the phone lines up to all of you guys, and you guys talk about Larry Bird. What does he mean to you? What's your favorite Larry Bird moment? And then put a whole video together with people calling in and talking about Bird. However, work got very busy for me, and I live on the opposite side of the world of the USA. I live in Japan. So by the time I got around to it, and I had a small block of time where I could open the phone lines up, it was like 5, 6 in the morning on the day of Larry Bird's birthday in the USA, and it was getting late on my end. I had to go to bed to wake up early for work. So the lines were only open for a short amount of time. So I wasn't able to get the message out appropriately and do the video that I wanted to do. However, next year, I'll plan this out a little bit better and we can do something like that for Larry Bird's 68th birthday. So for now, I'm going to keep it a little bit more simple because time didn't allow me to do it the way I wanted to. So we're going to react to Jonny Arnett's video. Great YouTuber, by the way. Go check out his channel. Why Larry Bird is underrated. And I figured this was a good video to do for his birthday because we want to talk about why we appreciate Bird. And what better way to talk about that than to understand why he is underappreciated and underrated, and get into that.
It is widely accepted that Larry Bird is one of the greatest NBA players of all time, and even sneaks his way into the GOAT debate among many basketball circles. The thing is, I personally rank Larry Bird higher than most people do, as he's currently sitting in the 6th spot on my all-time list, and I even have him ranked slightly ahead of Magic Johnson, which is certainly a more uncommon opinion. I think there's some major misconceptions to Bird's game that result in him not getting quite as much credit as I believe he deserves, and by the end of this video, I think that I can convince some of you that Larry Legend is in fact underrated. Before we get into some misconceptions, let's start with what most people already know about Bird, and I'll elaborate upon it. Over his 13-year career, Larry averaged 24.3 points on a stellar 56.4 true shooting percentage. Despite their talent-heavy history, Bird is the Celtics' all-time leading playoff scorer. So whether it was in the regular season or the postseason, he was always an efficient and lethal threat. He was obviously a legendary scorer and an incredibly efficient shooter. Larry is objectively one of the greatest three-point shooters of all time, as he's tied with Craig Hodges for the most three-point contests won in a career with a total of 3. The thing is, Hodges participated in a total of 8 three-point competitions, while Bird only participated in a total of 4. So he literally did the same amount of damage as the other all-time leader in half the amount of time. On top of all of this, you really could make the argument that Bird is the most all-around efficient scorer of NBA history. If that seems like a stretch, then consider this. During some of his prime years, Larry went on a 5-year stretch where he had 50-40-90 percentages. Only 9 players in NBA history have achieved at least one season of 50-40-90 percentages, yet Larry did it over a 5-year stretch while putting up just about 28, 10, and 7 each night. The only player who has come close to that all-around efficiency over such a long period of time is actually Steve Nash. But the thing is, Nash was never primarily a scorer
Right.
and averaged roughly half the amount of points that Larry did during his stretch. To efficiently score that many points on that kind of volume of all-around shot attempts is something that no one else has ever done as well as Larry Bird did. Again, maybe some of you didn't know the extent of how lethal Larry was as an all-around efficient scorer, but I do feel like that's probably the most commonly understood aspect of his game. Now for the misconceptions and the details that definitely make Larry an underrated player. There are a lot of people, especially younger basketball fans, who believe that Larry was a subpar defender. This is incredibly inaccurate, as Bird wasn't just a good defensive player, but a great one. As a 6'9" small forward, he definitely had the size and length to frustrate the offensive opponent. Sure, there is the narrative that Larry was a slow and unathletic player, and thus it affected his defensive play. This is true to a certain extent, but it's also grossly exaggerated. What Larry did have are the most important traits of a great defensive player, which are hustle, heart, intelligence, effort, and availability. Larry was never lacking in any of these areas. He always put in the work, and he was incredible not only at reading the defenses, but also at anticipating them. Larry made 3 NBA All-Defense teams throughout the course of his career, and even finished as high as 3rd overall in the Defensive Player of the Year running in 1983. He wasn't just a solid on-ball and help defender, but he was also a terrific pickpocket, as Larry averaged a fantastic 1.7 steals per game over the course of his 13-year career. His best evening in this area came on February 18, 1985 against the Utah Jazz, when Larry dropped 30 points, 12 rebounds, 10 assists, and 9 steals in only 3 quarters of play. Due to them absolutely destroying the Jazz, Bird didn't play a second of the 4th quarter. To this day, the NBA record for the most steals in a single game is 11. So not only could he have easily been only the 2nd player to ever achieve the quadruple-double, but if Bird had played the 4th, he might have been the record holder for the most steals in a game. You have to be a great defensive player in order to be in a position to seize that record. On top of all of that, Bird led the entire NBA in defensive win shares a total of 4 times. That's the 4th most in NBA history. The only players ahead of him on that list are Tim Duncan, George Mikan, and Bill Russell. That is a remarkably short list of great defensive players. I'm not trying to say that Bird was on the level of someone like Dennis Rodman or Scottie Pippen, but to call Larry anything other than a great defensive player is either completely ignorant or is just plain disrespect towards his game. The other key area where people underappreciate Bird was his rebounding ability, as Larry was simply one of the greatest rebounding small forwards that the game has ever seen. He was aggressive and tenacious, as he got as high as 11 rebounds per game in 1983. Qualities that I mentioned earlier, like his size, hustle, and intelligence, are also things that helped him as he battled on the boards. Over the course of his career, Larry averaged a whopping 10 rebounds per game, and when he was starting specifically at the small forward position, he averaged 9.5 rebounds per game. That's the 3rd highest average among primary small forwards in NBA history. The only players ahead of him are Billy Cunningham and Elgin Baylor, who both played in the 1960s, which was easily the most inflated rebounding era of basketball history. So not only is Bird an underrated rebounder, not only is he objectively one of the all-time great rebounders, but he's also arguably the greatest rebounder ever at his position. Along with all the other skills I talked about, Larry was also a remarkably gifted facilitator. But I won't delve into that much, because like his shooting, I also think that's an area that a decent amount of people have a strong appreciation for. Ultimately, I think it's his solid defense and his elite rebounding that people underestimate, which is why I think he's underrated, regardless of the fact that people still refer to him as Larry Legend. Do you agree? Where does Larry Bird rank on your list of the greatest players of all time? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always. Make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.
I couldn't agree more with Johnny Arnett. He slightly brushed over, barely slightly brushed over the assist thing, and it makes sense because, you know what, Some people do understand the magnificent passer that Larry Bird was, but I still come across quite a bit of people that would scoff, at the idea of Larry Bird being a great passer. I was like, you just don't know. Don't scoff until you do your research and then come back and talk to me. Right? The burden of proof is on you. I'm standing my ground. I've done my research. So the burden of proof is on you. Bring it to me and tell me why. But you're going to come back to me and you're going to be like, damn, dog, I didn't know Larry Bird could pass like that. You was right. Well, don't put up an argument with me next time. If you don't know what you're talking about, do the research first. Yes, I've said this in the past. Larry Bird on any given night was a good to great defensive player. No, he wasn't the absolute lockdown player. He's not going to lock anybody up in a way some other players would. But he had a high basketball IQ. He had great vision. He had great timing and anticipation. And that allowed him to do some pretty miraculous things on the defensive end of the floor. And he did his research. And he studied game tape. So he was aware of the tendencies and characteristics and what players felt comfortable with in their comfort zones, so he can anticipate what certain players were going to do. A little bit of homework and some skill and some effort and tenacity can go a very long way on the defensive end. A lot of defense is effort, man. And nowadays, a lot of guys, most players, don't put forth the effort on defense. And yes, he's absolutely right. Larry Bird didn't make some all-defensive team selections. I believe all three of them were second-team defensive selections. And a lot of people don't know that. When you tell them, Larry Bird actually made 3 all-defensive team selections. What? No, he didn't. Yes, he did. Yes, he did, sir. And like I tell people with everything, we live in a day and age today where most people are just analytics. Analytics, advanced analytics, numbers. And Max Kellerman always says, he's a big analytics guy. And he defends it by saying, what you don't understand is that analytics are basically a receipt of something that happened in history. It tells a story. Well, yes. But what story is it telling? Those numbers that you value so greatly, and they do hold weight. But what story are those numbers telling you? What happened? What is the complete context of the situation? How did those numbers become the numbers that you hold so high in regard? Tell me the whole story. And that's going to require some research. It is. But a lot of people don't want to do that. Are certain players' numbers higher because they played in a different system? Are certain players' numbers lower because they were dealing with some injuries? Or because they willingly took a back seat to another player that they acquired in a trade? Tell me the full story. Why are the numbers what they are? And I said that to say this. People might look at, he only made 3 all-defensive teams, and it was only second teams. Do you understand the era that Larry Bird played in? At his position, at the forward position, do you understand the defensive juggernauts that were in the league at that time? At the forward positions. And there were definitely juggernauts at the center and other positions as well. But we're talking about Larry Bird, who was classified as a small forward. And on occasion played power forward. People don't throw darts at me for saying that. On occasion, but I know generally he is a notoriously known as a small forward. But either way, when they ranked these all defensive selections back in the 80s, there was a center, there were 2 power forwards, and there were 2 guards. Generally, there were a couple of years where there were some players that were like shooting guard / forward, where there was one year there was actually like 3 guards in there, 3 or 4 guards. And it's like, well, that guy usually plays guard, but he's tall enough to be a small forward, so they all made it on the same team. So there's been some situations like that, but generally speaking, right, there were 2 forwards named to each team, first and second each year. And like I said, Larry Bird was going up against some stiff competition. And the fact that he made it on 3, not only did he make it on 3, but he made it on 3 also being a high octane offensive player as well. See, people don't take that into consideration. He's playing both ends of the floor at a high level with a lot of responsibility on the offensive end while having to exert that same kind of energy on the defensive end. Now, you got some defensive juggernauts, tough defenders that were better defenders than Larry Bird that were making these all-defensive teams over him, but they didn't have the responsibility that he had on the offensive end. They weren't exerting that kind of energy on the offensive end. You have to take that into consideration. You do. Some defensive specialists that were making those teams that Larry Bird had to go against. The competition was stiff, I'm telling you. Dan Roundfield, Kerm Washington, Secretary of Defense Bobby Jones, Lonnie Shelton, Jack Sikma. Yes, he was largely known as a center, but he was also categorized and played power forward at times. Paul Pressey, Sidney Moncrief, Michael Cooper, Karl Malone, Buck Williams, Rick Mahorn, Dennis Rodman. Come on, man. There were so many defensive specialists back then. The fact that he made 3 teams while exerting that kind of energy and responsibility on the offensive end is incredible. See, nowadays people like to say two-way player, right? And then they like to separate a two-way player, a guy that plays offense and defense at a high end, from or just make it its own category. So they'll be like, oh, just for an example, years ago, the trending narrative was LeBron James is the best player in the league, but Kawhi Leonard is the best two-way player in the league. What the hell? Is defense not part of your game? Is it not? That goes to you as an overall player. That contributes to you as an overall player. So if one guy isn't playing defense, well, that's a knock on him. And if this guy is playing defense, well, +1 on his side. But I'm not going to put him in a separate category just to say this guy's the best player in the league. Defense is part of it. If you're a defensive liability or you're not as good as defense, well, that goes against your overall player score, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I'm probably repeating myself. I'm just passionate, I suppose. But yes, Larry Bird, underrated defender. Larry Bird, underrated rebounder. You can pencil him in for 10 rebounds at a minimum per game. The slow, unathletic white boy out here grabbing 10 rebounds a game at the small forward position. Not power forward, not at the small forward position. Tussling, fighting with the bigger, faster, more athletic, stronger other guys. Grabbing 10 rebounds a game? Crafty, isn't it? Crafty. Maybe even to some degree, deceptively strong. Might be surprised how strong Larry Bird is. But he knew how to work angles. He knew how to put himself in position. He knew how to crash the boards. He knew how to anticipate rebounds. Put him in position. He acts quickly. Quick response time. Anticipation. Give me that board. The never quit mentality. I've seen him around the rim. Just him in a green jersey surrounded by a sea of all other jerseys. Grab like 3 or 4 rebounds trying to do putbacks over all of them. I ain't making this up. I'm not. It actually makes me chuckle when we like to compare Larry Bird to some of these other players who are stronger than him at his height or taller at his position, and they can't grab nearly as many rebounds as this guy. And they're playing around smaller players today with all this small ball. And they still can't compare to Larry Bird in the rebounding category. You kidding me? and there's probably a slight uptick in possessions today. Come on, man. Come on. Help me out here. And he mentioned that stretch Larry Bird had, right? The 50-40-90 stretch for a span of 5 years. That was his average. And I was like, well, the only player I can even think could do that right now. For that span, there's only two players, Steph Curry and Kevin Durant, that can put up the points that Larry Bird was putting up and still average 50, 40, 90 for a stretch like that. That could rival that. Hell, Kevin Durant be messing around with 55, 40, 90 these days. But they ain't grabbing the rebounds Larry Bird's grabbing either. And they ain't playing defense like Larry Bird's playing defense. Hell, they can't even pass the ball like Larry. And Steph Curry's a point guard. Come on, man. Come on, man. What are we talking about here? I'm on a roll, baby. I'm on a roll. Johnny Arnett had Larry Bird play 6 on his all-time list. That's where I had Larry Bird originally, somewhere in that range before starting this YouTube channel. But after I started this YouTube channel and learned even more about Larry Bird and more context regarding this guy's legacy and his career and watching so much footage, I was like, I got to bump this guy up. I had him too low at number 6. I did. Initially, I had Magic Johnson ahead of him. And while Magic Johnson may have more accolades and awards, when I consider the accolades and awards that Larry has, and then the eye test, I just think Larry Bird was the better player than Magic Johnson. I was like, nah, I'm bumping Larry Bird up. Got to. I got Larry Bird sitting firmly at number 3 all time for me as the greatest small forward to ever play the game of basketball. Especially considering how much he accomplished and the amount of time he accomplished it. So a lot of people want to talk about longevity. And yes, longevity has something to do with it. But opposite of longevity, if someone didn't play as long but accomplished almost as much as you in the major categories as well, I got to take that into consideration. I got a guy that played half the time the other guy and accomplished damn near almost as much as that guy. I think that I have to take that into consideration. So I think it goes both ways. So whatever you value more, I suppose. But I try to be unbiased as possible. Happy birthday to the boy, Larry Legend. Larry Bird, I hope you enjoy your birthday. I hope you do whatever the hell you want to do, Larry. You want to be out fishing, fly fishing, cracking back some beers on the dock, on your boat. You trying to shoot some golf. You just want to relax in your favorite recliner. Hell, you want to step out of your comfort zone. Go to the strip club. Throw them dollar bills. Whatever you want to do. Have fun, my brother. We appreciate you for what you did for the NBA. We appreciate you, along with Magic Johnson, for being a major part for bringing life back to the league when it was on life support. Shout out to Dr. J for holding it down during that time. Shout out to you, Larry Bird, for being an example of how a basketball player should be. Heart, hustle, determination, ultimate willpower, no quit, not about money, love for the game. Thank you for being a shining example for all future players that came after you. It's these fundamentals and golden values that can help create great, elite, and legendary players like yourself. Thank you, Larry Bird, for moving the NBA forward and passing the torch on to those that would be the new torchbearers and move on after you. One thing I would like to add. It's funny how you got so many people nowadays saying Larry Bird wasn't a great three-point shooter, this, that, and the third. And I'm like, you idiot. I put out a whole video debunking that. And I put out videos about Larry Bird's defensive prowess. Go check out our Larry Bird playlist. You'll find it. You'll have to do some digging because there's a lot of damn videos. But back to the three-point thing. And it's like, you doofus. Do you realize Larry Bird is basically the grandfather of the three-point line? Hell, This league that you love today with all these three-point shots going up at a hilarious rate probably wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for Larry Bird being a big reason why the three-point line was popularized. Everybody wanted to shoot like Bird. The first winner of the three-point contest, the first champion. Not only that, like Arnett said, he won 3 in a row. As Larry Bird is out there draining threes at a rate nobody else was during his era, in a league where it still wasn't popularized like it is today, but given the context of the era and the time, everybody wanted to shoot like Bird. He popularized it. He was a grandfather of the three-point line for years. When you talk Larry Bird, you think three-point shooter. And y'all have the audacity to say this man wasn't no good three-point shooter, no great three-point shooter. Because you lack context, and honestly, you're probably just an idiot. I said it. Go ahead, YouTube, demonetize me. Go ahead, shadow ban me like you guys like to do. I've already been shadow banned a few times. Go ahead, don't put my videos out on the algorithm. Don't let my fabulous subscribers know I posted a video or hide it from them. You've already done it a few times. I know. I have the proof. Go ahead. Yeah, I called somebody an idiot. I'm a bully. Make sure you put a capital B-U for bully, by the way. That's all I got to say about it. I appreciate you all for stepping in. In the comment section, say whatever the hell you want to say about Larry Bird. Make sure you drop that man a happy birthday right here in the comment section. And like this video was supposed to be, what Larry Bird means to you and what's your Larry Bird favorite, or what's your favorite Larry Bird moment, you can drop that in the comment section too. But I will make an official video next year for his birthday. We will open up the phone lines and you guys can do all the talking and I will shut the hell up because y'all know more about Larry Bird than I do. I'm regurgitating what I've learned from you all and these videos and some research. So I have to thank you all for really opening my eyes even more to the importance and legacy that is Larry Bird. All right? Appreciate y'all. Be safe. Have a happy holiday, and I'll catch you on the next one. We out, baby.